It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
It's not fun.
I have duct tape in my drawer for the lady that was.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's an important part of the video for 2 reasons. One, introduce myself. My name is Marc Claycomb. I'm presently the commander for the Criminal Investigations Unit for the Melbourne Police Department. I've been in law enforcement for 27 years, and through that I've worked in operations and support services and criminal investigations. I've also been a SWAT medic, SWAT operator, SWAT team leader, SWAT commander, and commander over the Specialty Services Group, which is who the majority of will be responding to events like this. So I come to you with some years of experience, and I'm ready, willing, and able to answer any questions that you have. But we're going to get into the meat of this in just a second. A couple disclaimers first, on your note. This is a video that's provided by the Texas Department of Public Safety, and it follows the guidelines of the Department of Homeland Security for active threat response. And here you'll see active shooter, but we refer to it as active threat now because the threat is not always a firearm. So we don't want you to hyper-focus on a firearm when it can be a threat of a multitude of kinds. We want you to leave today prepared, not paranoid. Paranoia is not what we're looking for, and with training and some forethought on your part, you will be far better prepared, infinitely more if you've never thought about this before, when you leave today. But you're going to need to continue to work on the skills that we talk about today. They are perishable skills. You can't just think about it today and never think about it again and be prepared if an event like this takes place. Another disclaimer. This was prepared by the Texas Department of Public Safety. This is a single scenario to exemplify the things that we're going to talk about today. Men will panic too and potentially need duct tape if they are without a plan. Okay? If you don't have a plan of some kind, your brain will turn into jello when the fight or flight dumps adrenaline into your body and you don't know what to do with it. So it's important that we talk about that. We talk about potential scenarios before you ever get in it, because that is the first step in the right direction of being prepared. Cool? Guys will panic and scream and be stupid. Really more than women, I think. But you need to have a plan ahead of time. So in your pre-planned response for an active threat scenario, what are your 3 choices?
Run, hide, or fight.
Run, hide, or fight. That is not a buffet that you get to pick the one you want to choose. That is an order of priority. If you can run safely away from the threat, you run as far and as fast as you can until you feel that you're safe, unless given direction by first responders who happen to be on scene. And then and only then you call the police. If you are not able to do that for any reason, what is your next choice?
Hide.
Hide. And when we say hide, and we're going to go a little bit more into this, we mean barricade. We don't mean tornado position under a table. We mean barricade, put as much crap between you and the threat as you possibly can. Be dark, be quiet, and be as safe as possible because you're not able to run. And in that, we're going to talk about arming ourselves, because if the second step fails, we run into is your only option, and you fight like your life depends on it, because it absolutely does. Which is a tough decision to make for some people. Some of us have been involved in physical altercations in our life, so we've got some experience in how incredibly draining that can be. And it's not like in the movies where you fight and fisticuff for 20 minutes. It takes mental preparation before you ever get in that situation, so it's important that you start having that conversation with yourself now. Will you be able to take physical action against somebody to save your life or the life of somebody else? And what are you willing to do that? We'll talk about incapacitation, and we'll come back to that. So we're going to break those 3 things down and talk about them a little bit more specifically. Do you have any questions about anything we've said so far? Okay? And I give you full authority. If there's something that we cover today that we don't, bring it up and we'll talk about it. I want you guys to get the same experience as the morning crew did. And because it's pretty interactive, that's the only formal part of the presentation, and then I'll break down those groups. It can go in a variety of directions, and I want to make sure you guys get the most out of it. And we're videotaping too, so. So let's talk about run. We run as far and as fast as we can. We've got some crucial decisions to make when we make this decision. And you may have seen it in the video. You're encouraging other people to go with you. And once you realize there's a safe direction, there's a threat, and you can get to that safe location without putting yourself in harm's way, you're encouraging people to come with you for a realistic and short period of time. Now, the definition of realistic and short is going to depend on who your audience is, i.e. strangers in a mall versus coworkers versus family members. That time may be a little bit different than you, and depending on whether my wife is getting along with me, she might take a little more time with me. But in seriousness, you need to think about that, because we're going to talk about generalities today. We're going to talk about the formula of run, hide, fight. You're going to have to decide through HR and the owners and operators of this some of the intricacies about your policies and your response plans. Management has responsibility to their workers at some level, maybe. Teachers at schools have responsibility to a classroom of children that are not theirs. So there are several layers to it that you need to think about, but the big plan is run, hide, or fight in that order. So running. We are running to a safe location. If you are not sure that there is a safe location to run to, running is not your option. If you are sure there is not a safe location for you to run to, running is not your option. So if you can't run, you barricade, hide. But if you can run, you run as far and as fast as you can. If law enforcement and first responders are not on scene to give you direction, you get to decide how far that is. It could be next door, it could be half a mile down the road, it could be a full marathon. Only when you feel and know that you're safe, you stop, you call us and tell us everything you possibly can. And if you don't pick up your phone and take it with you, go find one. Do not wait to gather stuff. Your purse, and I know we talked about this morning, this is a dog-friendly location, so pets add another layer. Pets are family. That's why you have it at work, right? That's why you have a pet-friendly. But those are some things that you need to think about. And we're going to talk about starting to put this thought process in play. I always suggest you take your workspace, because that's what you know every day. You think about situational awareness. What are my exits? What are my options? What are my weapons of opportunity? But that cannot be the only place that you think about for a couple of reasons. One, Murphy's Law is going to tell you that's not where you're going to be when an emergency takes place. So you need to think about other places. And two, what and who's going to be around you when you do that. You need to take those things into consideration too. The good thing about this program is it doesn't apply just to work. It applies to you at home, it applies to you out, it applies to you here, it applies to you pretty much anywhere you want. And we talk about situational awareness being key of that, because that's part of your plan. You have to know where you can exit, where you can safely go, where you can barricade, and what your options are. How many exits are there to this building?
On this side.
3? I've heard 3, 4, and 5.
No, on this side. Well, on this side there's
Yes, yours.
Jim's door. Oh, I
I've heard 3, 4, 5, and 6. 4 is the predominant. 5.
and 6. There's 6. There's 6.
6 doors?
6.
Okay, what are they?
Front
door.
The side door.
There's 4 on this side. There's 1 up here. There's 1 on the side hallway here. There's 2 in fulfillment. There's 1 back here. And there's 1, oh, 1 back to the.
And those are all doors, or like any of them roll-up doors? Or?
One's
a roll-up.
So that's one of the 6 is a roll-up? Do you have hurricane windows in this building?
No.
Are those exits?
Yes, and me.
So how many exits do you have?
However,
I can't reach them.
they are
They're
they
temporary, aren't
have,
they? They're dual.
film on
The
them.
film on
The
them.
3M film?
Yeah,
So they're pretty much hurricane-ish.
they're hurricane-ish.
So you need to be aware of that in your situational awareness, your assessments. The 3M stuff's pretty good,
Yeah.
especially for impacts on the outside. I don't know about impacts on the inside, but that does make it hurricane-proofish. Hurricane windows, if we had a fire department outside right now, and you had hurricane windows, would not cut through a hurricane window with a circular saw in less than a few minutes. It's 2 sheets of hurricane glass stuck together with laminate that gums up that saw, and they literally will not get through the window for a couple of minutes. We have shot .308 rounds at it, and it will not penetrate. Those windows are designed to take a 2x4 at 55 miles an hour and be impact resistant. So, important that you know that. If you think of windows and exit, it may not be, depending on the hurricane code.
They're not quite hurricane glass, but they will.
But
Throwing a door at it, throwing a chair at it might not get you through.
But super important you know that, because what you think is an exit, it's not. Not only is it no longer an exit for you, a chair against a hurricane window is going to attract a whole lot of attention.
Right.
So stuff that you need to think about. So let's go back to run for a minute. If nobody's there, you get to decide how far that is, and when you're safe, you get to call us. If we are outside, we are going to give you loud and clear direction of what we want you to do, because we don't know who the bad guys are and who the good guys are. Even though you know, we don't. And we're going to corral you into locations that we can start doing debriefs, get crucial information from you, what the threat is inside, how many people there are, where they last were, so we can do our job. It's important you know, and we'll bring this up a couple times throughout this conversation. Our job when we arrive on scene is one thing, and one thing only. That first wave. Now, there's a bunch of other people coming to do other stuff too, but the first wave of people to arrive at an incident like this are to find and neutralize the threat and nothing else. It's important that you know that, because we're going to come in with a purpose, and you could be scared as hell, potentially injured, think that the cavalry is here and we're going to walk over and past you to go take care of business. Because we have to stop that threat and stop that from happening. And that can be a huge psychological impact to you if you're in that position. That's why we tell you ahead of time, so you know why. Now, the other 100 people coming in behind us are here to help. Medical, we have fire department personnel injected in our groups to come in and do triaging on scene. So the cavalry is coming, but you have to understand the purpose of that first wave. They've done studies ever since Columbine, which was the big game changer for us, and how we respond to these events. And even though they started taking a different approach, we no longer send SWAT and surround it and wait, because people are still dying, they're still shooting people. Even when we changed our response, people are still dying because they're bleeding out. So we're getting in with tourniquets and fire department personnel to address blood loss issues too. So, not a fun topic. I know this whole conversation is not fun, but it's an important one we need to have, and I just want to be candid with you so you know what that is. The least amount of psychological impact in an event like this, the better off everybody's going to be. So we're going to corral you into what we call safe zones, where we verify who you are and your identity, that you belong here, and you guys can vouch for each other, and we get crucial information from you about how we're going to respond. And one of the reasons I didn't bring up this morning that we do that is there have been documented incidences nationwide and worldwide where bad guys have gone in, done chaos and pandemonium, changed their clothes, and come out with people evacuating. To include, they've made their captors, they've made their people that they've taken into custody change clothes with them and come out. So they're dressed like the people that they had hostage, and the good guys are dressed as the bad guys. So we have to separate. It's important that when we interview you, we separate you from each other. Because if you start talking about it, your memory will become what somebody told you, and it'll muddy the waters. So we don't want to do that. What did they talk about in how you should exit the building if we're out there?
Listen to what you're saying.
Listen to us, hands up, fingers spread,
Don't point.
try not to point, try not to scream and yell. It's going to be hard, but try not to. And why do we ask that you do that?
So you can see that we're not in front.
And why would we shoot you?
You don't might think we're the bad person.
Yeah.
And we don't know if you're holding a gun or whatever, because
Yeah.
keep in mind, the majority of these are active shooter events. But, and even if your hands are empty, if there's direct pointing, and we're all on edge at this point, right? And you might have a phone in your hand, and if you're pointing, that can look more like a gun. It's also important for you to know, I talked about this morning, there's a gun manufacturer that makes a 380 over-under that looks exactly like an iPhone 7.
Mm-hmm.
It is a gun. It is not a phone, but it looks like a phone.
Why did they do that?
Wow.
So, yeah.
I know, this is ridiculous.
So, just be aware, I share that with you because we don't just shoot people because they pointed at us. We shoot at people because we're in an active threat response with a gun involved, and people have something in their hand we think is a gun, blah, blah, blah. So, that's run, and that would be the beginning of a very long day for all of us. It's important that you know, if an event like this takes place, the event location becomes a crime scene, and it becomes a crime scene after we ensure everybody is safe. So after we have all the evacuees go to one location, we would come in and do a room-to-room clearance with several SWAT teams over multiple hours to verify there was nobody else. There was a bad guy, there was no people that were still hiding, and that's a multi-hour event, and then we get into crime scene processing. You probably into a second day and a command post set up, and it's important that you know that too, because at the end of a very long day, you anticipate, from this morning, the woman was very concerned about getting her purse and her keys, and it will probably be a while. So I discussed, as they bring you into the safe zones, we try to keep you fed and keep you watered, keep you safe, keep you warm, explain to you as much as we can what's going on and why. Have a family relocation center set up so your loved ones can come out, know that you're okay, or get a status on where you are, and then get you reunited as soon as we can. It's not fast, but there is a process to it that's important that you know. Questions on run? Anything we didn't cover this morning you can think of?
Not yet. even more reason why we don't let people in the building to walk around by themselves.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Jill.
No, it's good. It should be brought up and talked about. And you guys have, you guys have a real good security system set up already, with the proxy cards and with the windows and the ability to let people in. You have to, I don't know how you guys, we refer to it as you have to challenge people when they're in the building and don't. There's probably a better word for that. A softer way of, hey, who are you and why are you here? And not doing the follow-throughs, not let people walk in behind you, and some of those security issues. Think about it. So, if running fails because we are not able to run because the threat, yes sir?
So what happens like when there are too many people for an exit? So I have 10 people at it.
In a bottle.
Run faster.
That's a very good question. So you have 10 people, you're trying to get through a single door as rapidly as possible, and clearly that turns fairly chaotic pretty quickly. Cooler heads prevail, and I'm not going to pretend for a moment that it's not going to be chaotic. It is. But you're going to have to work together as a team to get out as quickly as you can, and just keep moving. Don't get stuck, 2 people stuck in the door like the Three Stooges, because that you ruin that exit. And just work together to communicate to get out. And you might have to do that very quietly, depending on what the situation is. But no, it's a valid exit. No, there's no threat before you start moving from a barricade situation, for where you've self-barricaded for safety, which is what we're going to get into now. If you're not able to run because there's no exit, because the threat is between you and the exit, because there's multiple threats, because you don't know where the threat is, but you know it's out there, barricading is your best option. And I brought it up this morning. You're probably going to ask some questions as this conversation goes on, and I'm not going to give you a direct answer. I'm going to help you find the answer for yourself, because I can't give you a magic answer that's going to answer everything. There are a number of variables that are going to take place, and it's super important that you learn and are able to work through this formula on your own, real time, at the venue you're in with the situation you have in front of you. So that's why we walk you through it, and I don't tell you, oh yeah, you're going to do this, that, and the other, and that's the answer. So I know it might be annoying as we walk through some of the questions, but that's why. So barricade. Anybody in the military or previously in the military, raise your hand high and proud. Thank you for your service, and you are not allowed to answer this question. Can the rest of you answer the difference? What is the difference between cover and concealment? Take a guess.
Concealing is like,
probably still see yours.
right, I was thinking like concealing is like, I don't know, so they can't recognize you.
Okay, you're on the right track?
I was gonna say the difference is accessibility.
Okay, tell me more.
Meaning if you're just covered, you're probably more accessible to than you are if you're concealed.
If you're of the right mindset, but you have it backwards. Concealment means you cannot see me, but I'm not protected. So I'm behind a drape, we're playing hide and seek, and I'm behind a drape, and you don't know I'm there. I'm concealed from view. But once you figure out where I am, because my feet are sticking out, or because the drape is now shaped like a body, you can punch me in the face, you can stab me with a knife, you can hit me with a bat, you can shoot me with a gun. If I'm behind an engine block, you can't see me, you can't hit me with a bat, you can't stab me with a knife, depending on the gun you have, you're probably not going to hurt me. Cover means you are protected and out of view. Concealment means you're just out of view. So, sit well with everybody? So we're looking for cover. We're looking for protection. Best way I can describe it is you're looking to put as much crap between you and the threat as you possibly can. You saw in the video, it was photocopiers, it could be a refrigerator, it could be chairs, it could be desks, it could be TVs. Solid wood doors are always the best option. Metal doors, you want to put stuff. What else are we looking to do when we barricade? She did it in the...
Locked doors?
Locked doors, absolutely. Lights out,
Phones off.
Yeah,
phones off, or at least silenced. Sound and light discipline and a locked door are super important. Do we know what the major driver is for active shooters and active threat personnel in their quest?
Easy access to
Online
people.
for-
And
All those things, but the biggest driver is
Kill as many people as possible.
body count. Because, one of the many reasons is, if it doesn't meet or exceed the body count of the last major event, you're not going to hear about it on the national news. I'll give you an example. Everyone remember?
Threat is to get into national news.
What's that?
Sorry, never mind.
Yeah, they said an active threat is to get on the news.
It's for attention.
The
A lot
goal
of
is to
times
draw
it's
attention to themselves.
yeah.
So
It's
so
not-
they can just shoot to get on news? if that.
It's not always the case, but in the large majority of mass shooter events that we've had, it's for reputation and the ability to get on the national news. Some are not. Some, there's people with mental illness. Some, it's a disgruntled employee. Some are others. But some of the big ones, Columbine, it's notoriety. So, everybody remember Sandy Hook? How many years ago was that?
7?
Just over 5, I think. I think December was they just opened the new school. It's a pretty fantastic school. How many active threat events have we had since Sandy Hook in schools in America involving firearms where at least one round was fired?
Quite a few.
Probably.
But we don't hear about them all.
Jumping ahead. So this is a couple years old. It was almost 200. And those involve suicides, those involve single shots, don't all involve mass casualty events. But you don't hear about them unless you're local, because they're not salacious and they don't meet or exceed the last body count. So in those instances where people are doing it to reach those numbers, they know we're coming. They know for a fact we're coming, so they're trying to get as much damage done as quickly as they can before we arrive. And if you have an active shooter that's looking for that purpose, and you guys engage this thought process and remove a target-rich environment immediately, they're going to have to go search for targets. They're going to have to go search for victims. And when they do that and they come upon a dark, quiet room with the door locked, do you think they're going to spend time on that? Or are they going to think they'll keep looking? In most cases, they're going to keep looking. But if they hear somebody behind the door, they might be interested. If it's locked, they might look on. But that's why you're doing all those things. Noise discipline, sound discipline, the same thing. Sound discipline, light discipline, and locking the door. Creating that barrier, creating it to be more problematic than it's worth for them. So, since we brought it up, what do you think the average response time is for the Melbourne Police Department for Priority 1 events, which would be something like this?
4 minutes.
4 minutes, higher or lower? 20 minutes, higher or lower?
Lower
I mean, from the
than.
time we called.
10
Correct.
minutes.
6.
I was gonna say 6.
On average, it's just under 5, which is actually a pretty rapid response time for an agency our size with the amount of call load that we have and the amount of geographical area, which is about 48 square miles.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
However, if you are in a building with an active shooter, 4.5 minutes is a lifetime. So the purpose for this training is so that you are the most prepared that you can possibly be for your safety and well-being in that 4.5 minutes, because until we arrive, you own it. You are the first responders until we get here. So that's why this is super important. So barricade, our efforts in barricading is to not be found and to wait until it's safe. You get to decide when that is before you come out. The one other thing that we're going to do, once you've barricaded yourself and you've done that to the best of your ability, what do you think the next thing we should do?
Again, contact.
Call 911.
Okay, absolutely. What else?
Arm yourself. Prepare.
Absolutely. So this is when we talk about weapons of opportunity. What is a weapon of opportunity?
Anything heavy.
Name things in this room that you can see that are weapons of opportunity.
Chairs.
There's knives in the kitchen,
Yeah.
coffee pot, coffee pot in the kitchen. Chairs.
Absolutely, absolutely. And name a couple ways you can use that fire extinguisher.
Shoot it at them, hit them with it.
Spray them with it.
Blind, distract, and bash. That's a multi-purpose tool. And one weapon that you all have, that most of you have flown armed with, that I'm pretty sure you all have all day at work, would be what?
Pen.
Pen.
My knife.
Who said that?
Do you write with that as well?
Yep.
In blood.
Yep.
A pen, or anything like that. Blunt objects are great for traumatic injury, but this, to the eye orbits, and to the ears, and to the temple, and to the neck, is pretty catastrophic.
Keys as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Handful of keys between your fingers is brutal. And I go back to, we'll go back to the barricade part. Once you get barricaded, once you have the opportunity to call the police, and you don't have to say a word. Just dial 911 and get a connection. It's going to tell us where you are, and especially if multiple people are doing it, we start getting 911 calls from a single location and multiple, something's up. We're coming. So even if you can't speak, because we're using that sound discipline, you might be outside the room, just leave an open line. And you just stay there until it's safe. You determine when it's safe. When would that probably be?
Captain the police.
Yeah.
That's pretty much your guarantee it's safe. Other than that, unless you can see it happening, you know there's only one threat and that has been neutralized in some way, you get to decide when that is. But if you stay in place until we show up, that is perfectly acceptable and probably the best choice, unless you know for certain. Give you an example. Sandy Hook, there was a teacher that barricaded her and her 8 or 9 students in the bathroom in the classroom, which if any of you remember the bathrooms in the classroom, they're pretty small, so it was like a phone booth with 8 kids and her. So she was barricaded in the bathroom in the classroom in the school, and during that multi-hour room-to-room sweep where they were verifying there were survivors and people that were barricaded, they were extracting them and moving them as they cleared the rest of the school. They got into the room, realized there was somebody in the bathroom, and started a verbal conversation with her through the door, and she said, "How do I know you're the police?" And they're like, "Well, because we're the police, right?" So, slipped IDs and badges under the door so she could see that that wasn't good enough. So they had her call 911, and she was able to verify through police dispatch, through 911, that the people outside were who they said they were, and they were the cops, and she did nothing wrong. You have got to know. And if you're not, I mean, if it's me, right, and I can go, "Hey, it's me, I was in a training." You might be able to do
I've
that.
gone crazy and I know what you're gonna do. I know where you are.
Put the fire extinguisher down and open the door. But you gotta be sure. And she did nothing wrong. It's important that you know that, hey, cops, we're here to open up. Unless you know, you don't have to. In this particular situation. Or other situations. I'm not giving you legal advice for, but in this particular situation, that would be your best bet to know that things have either quelled or the cavalry's there and we're gonna escort you out because we haven't got the rest of the school or the venue cleared yet. So let's talk about fighting for a minute. For those of you who have been in physical altercations before, you know it's not like the movies. It is painful, it is short, and it's very tiring. But you have to be of the mindset, and there's nothing wrong if you can't get in this mindset. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad or feel wrong or feel different. You have to have the mental thought process and be committed to doing harm to another person to save yourself, because you have to be committed. It's not a one-punch kind of thing, unless you're using a fire extinguisher for someone's head. It may be. But in the video they talk about, I think the exact word they use is incapacitation. So in a scenario like this, what is incapacitation?
Unconscious.
Unconscious?
Did.
Either one of those things, because that's the unfortunate result in you fight until the threat is over. That's incapacitation. And unfortunately that may result in serious injury or death to the subject. We're not looking to kill anybody, we're looking to save ourselves, we're going to fight like our life depends on it because it does, and we're going to neutralize that threat as rapidly as we can, which unfortunately may result in death or great bodily harm. Be committed to that. It's important that you have that conversation with yourself before you get in a situation like this, especially when we talk about concealed weapons permits, Second Amendment rights, carrying a firearm, those kind of things. We're all for it. Contrary to popular belief, police department strongly encourages Second Amendment use. If you are committed, you've had that committed to doing it, not committed. You've had that conversation with yourself, you've picked a firearm that you're comfortable with and capable of shooting, you're accurate and dependable, and you have shot in realistic shooting conditions, not at paper targets in a sterile environment at a shooting range. Because I assure you, when the targets shoot back, it's a very different event. I assure you.
Now, if you shoot and you kill him, do you get in trouble?
What's that?
If you shoot him and kill him, do you get in trouble?
Why did you shoot him?
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Well, why did you shoot him? In the event you had in your head when you asked, why did you shoot him?
Self-defense.
They were trying to do harm.
In this scenario, do you think you could shoot him and not be in trouble?
Yeah, self-defense.
Were you in fear of great bodily harm or death to you and your coworkers?
Yes.
Then no. It's got to be self-defense, and when you get your concealed weapons permit, they'll go over the laws regarding that. You do? Good. So you went over those laws when you got your permit. Self-defense.
Now, how do we let you know if we do have a concealed
I
weapons
think that's
permit, we
what
have
I'm
to pull it out
trying to
and use it? If you guys are coming into the building, no, I'm not the person, I'm just trying to protect myself.
Hands
Put
up,
it down
down on the
my
floor.
weapons in my wallet, in my back pocket.
The short version is don't pull it out. For two reasons. One, if you're coming out in that stream of people with your hands up and spread, absolutely let us know before a pat down that you have a gun. That helps out a lot. Keeps everybody calm. And here's a crucial part that we need to talk about. And I don't know what the policy is. I'm not overriding your company policy. But in a situation, and it may be at dinner with your family, that you were carrying concealed legally, I still urge you to follow this process. If you can run, run. If you can barricade, barricade. And when and only when you are in a position to fight, that is your weapon of opportunity, and it's a very good one. The last place you want to be is in plain clothes with a gun in your hand with us responding to an active shooter event. I promise you, you don't want to be in that position.
Right.
I don't want you to be in that position. Don't go vigilante, but if you need it to protect yourself, absolutely use it. That make sense?
Yeah.
That's super important. Super easy to remember. Any other questions? Sorry.
In the event of, where we have to cooperate with the shooter, like, if he tells me to do something, what should I do,
This is one of those questions I can't answer for you. It's going to be dependent on where you are, what he's asking you to do, and what your other options are. My suggestion to you would be, not knowing what the scenario is that's in your head, he never should have been in a position to get you to do something forcibly because you should have been in fight mode before that ever happened. And if you're alone, it's all on you. If you're in a group, that should be a coordinated attack. A very rapid, coordinated, and committed attack, and that attack should continue until the threat is neutralized. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I appreciate your question. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I can't tell you what the answer to that is, not knowing what scenario that would be, so that's a decision you have to make for yourself at the time, but my suggestion to you would be never let it get that way.
What do you do if somebody panics? Duct tape.
It's a very good question. That's a very good question. It depends on the scenario. It depends on how many people you have there. It depends on if it's drawing attention that you do not want. And it depends on how committed you are and how involved that is in your safety and the safety of everybody else in the room. Me, I will tell you, I would rather apologize to that person after the fact for whatever restraint that I used to stop, to control that sound discipline. And I would try a calming hand and soft speaking if opportunity and time allow for that before duct tape.
Charge of that part.
But again, context will clarify. I cannot answer that question for you in the millions of scenarios that could take place, but that absolutely is not sound discipline and drawing undue attention to you in some of those scenarios. So things you have to think about. That's a very good question.
What would you do in the case of the lady in the video?
And the what?
The lady in the video that was.
Which one? There's two of them.
The
Screaming
one in
the lunchroom. Yeah, when they were in a fight.
Try to calm her down, try to get her to breathe, try to get her to breathe into a bag, try a bunch of options, but ultimately you have to make the decision of how committed you are to keeping that quiet.
Open the door somewhere else.
That is the zombie bait scenario. I wouldn't suggest that, because even though you may rid yourself of the immediate problem, you've just disclosed there's more people in the room, so I don't know if you want to tell you. Humorous response, but you understand my point? You need to take totality of circumstance into play to pick the best choice for where you are at that time and what you've got going on around you. Any other questions? Okay, so run, hide, fight. Everybody's comfortable with what each of those means. I encourage you to, again, start at your workspace. Get situational awareness. What are your exits? What are your options? What are your weapons of opportunity? And start using that everywhere you go. Dinner, at home or out, the movies, the mall, business trips, the rest of the building, because again, Murphy's Law will tell you you're going to be in the bathroom when something takes place, so what are your options there? It takes you 30 seconds. We want you to be prepared, not paranoid. Look around 30 seconds. What are my exit options? Doesn't matter where you are. Everybody has been out to eat and seen cops eating in a restaurant. Mm-hmm. You may not know this, but we are people, and we actually eat and fill up our cars with gas and crazy stuff like that. But where do they sit? Where do cops sit in a restaurant?
Backs against the wall.
Back to the wall, and they can see the door.
Yes.
That's a great tactical position. Yeah. So, on duty, my people know that I get first dibs because I have seniority and I shoot better. And my family knows it. I get first right of refusal, and now they're like, "Is that the best seat?" I'm like, because you can get situational awareness. Now when we have a table full of cops, it's who shoots best and who has seniority gets to sit with their back to the wall, and everybody else gets to sit on the other seat. So you're jockeying for the position, but it's super important, right? So situational awareness is 30 seconds no matter where you are, and super important in having that plan ahead of time so when the crap hits the fan, you're ahead of the game. I didn't tell the story this morning, but let me ask you this question first. What is the likelihood of something like this happening in Melbourne? Slim to none.
I think it's a good chance. I mean,
It's not if it's going to happen, it's when it happens again. Anybody here for William Cruz?
Yes.
yes,
Anybody here for the mall shooting?
Yes.
yes.
Which one?
Oh, it's true. There's one last year.
A couple years ago, it was domestic in the courtyard.
Yeah.
About 10 years to the day before that was a guy that was trying to be taken into custody by it's a probation officer or a bail bondsman, and it erupted into a gunfight back when FHP did security at Dillard's. And he ended up barricading himself into a candle store, and when we went in with SWAT, he killed himself. The movie theater,
Palm Bay Hospital.
Palm Bay Hospital, Melbourne Hospital, Wusthof Hospital. Yeah.
Yeah, we forget about all those.
And
Are
super-
you saying that these are all places that incidences have occurred?
Correct.
Potentially occurred?
have occurred.
Oh, okay.
Yep. All of those were active shooters except Wusthof was a guy with a knife in the gift shop. And Palm Bay Hospital was an active shooter event at a disgruntled previous employee at the cafeteria. There was a super brilliant young man who dressed up as the Joker and went to the Oakstown movie theater after the Aurora, Colorado incident. Poor life choices. So it's not if, it's when. That's why it's imperative that you be prepared and we have this conversation now before you run into that situation. So anybody in this class not gone to high school or middle school in the United States? Where did you go to school? Spain? You?
India.
Did you guys have fire drills in school?
Yeah.
You did? Okay, like twice a year, every year, your entire student career? But we've all had fire drills, so you know what I'm talking about, right? Fire alarm goes off, this is a drill, you get in line, you walk to the football field, you sweat for 20 minutes, you come back in when you get the all clear, and we know what that is. Yeah. Except for field trips. Those are always good too. But anybody in construction? Anybody pay for a commercial structure? How impactful is fire code on the overall cost of a build?
Extreme.
Extremely impactful. Up to 40% of your overall cost can be because of fire code. Firewalls, fire alarms, fire smoke detectors, sprinkler systems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in the United States, in the last 50 years, for all of the schools that have followed fire code and done fire drills, and how many children have died in schools following those codes in the last 50 years? 2. In the last 10, how many kids have died in schools because of armed confrontations and violence? How much time, energy, and effort have we spent on that?
Not enough.
I'm in high school now and we have to practice like once a semester.
Code Reds?
Yes, where they have to like put paper on the window.
Yep.
And we have to hide behind like the teacher's desk or
Yeah.
something.
So they basically employ run, hide, fight in the schools, but they take the run option out because they're in charge of
And it's all
1,400 kids.
blockaded, like they put a new gate in, so you have to go through the building to get in.
And it's a single point of entry exit. They have security control on who comes in. They know who's on campus. And when they initiate a code red, you lock down in the closest structure you're to if you're not already in a building. So I could be having math class at a portable and all of you are my students and there's a PE class on the field. When they call code red, all those kids are coming to my portable because I'm the closest to it. They lock the doors, they cover the windows, they turn out the lights, and I'm sure there's checking procedures and all kind of stuff too. So they definitely apply that to schools. And we've actually partnered with Brevard Public Schools, Holy Trinity Episcopal Academy, and Holy Name of Jesus, those two being the tip of the spear in taking this training very seriously. Their entire staff and most of their student body has gone through Run, Hide, Fight and Code Red drills, practical application of those drills so they can know what it's about before that ever takes place. Down to the little ones. We don't teach this class to the little ones, but we work on moving large groups of very small children from point A to point B as quickly as we can, which, as you know, is herding cats. So So we use long ropes with knots in them, and we make it a game, and that seems to work out better. But they are definitely applying these thoughts and ideas to make it as safe as possible for our feature, which is our kids. So test. So we're here. I'm not a police officer. I do not have a gun. There's an active threat event. You're wherever you would be at this time of day, and you go into lockdown, right? You can't run. There's multiple threats at the exits, so you barricade yourself wherever that is. So in your mind, think about where that would be probably at this point. And the threat's still there, so you can't leave. If you have a phone, you call 911, whatever the case may be. How long do you stay in a barricade situation? Until it's safe. The fire alarm goes off. What do you do? Until
you see smoke.
or fire, or we show up. Okay? You pass the test. Why this is important is we talk about rote memorization, and this goes back to the drills, the fire drills. The alarm goes off, you get up, you get in line, go out to the field, and come back. There have been multiple instances of this. The most profound one that I can remember was in the Midwest. As two teenage kids with high-powered hunting rifles shooting at a middle school, and they shot some children. They went to code red, locked down. The student body was in a room of some sort in a building in less than a minute, which took all the targets away. It worked perfectly until the kids pulled the fire alarm.
Yeah.
Every classroom door opened, and single file lines of children and teachers came out to the football field and they opened fire again. So this tells us a couple things. One, we can't rely on that rote memorization. We have to be able to free think, right? So if it's a normal day and you hear on the speaker, and it is the normal administration people, this is your drill, you're going to go out and do the normal thing. If you're in an active threat event, you have to be able to break that cycle and think through and not do that, right? That's also a good example of why when we learn these things, we practice because it's a perishable skill. And if you don't give it the time, energy, and effort in an ongoing fashion, you're not going to be able to respond as you should if this was second nature. Does that make sense? Bad and a good example of those two things. Anything I missed?
I don't think so.
Questions, comments, or concerns? Open forum.
We have an open floor plan on both sides of the building. So cubicles are not gonna stop anything. There's really no place to hide. So obviously the first thing is run, but we're all in an open area, so everybody's open. So.
Context is going to clarify. So if I'm an active shooter and somehow I get into the front lobby and I start shooting, and I only know part of the building. So when I walk in that front door, there's this whole set of cubicles that run down this wall.
Yeah, this one.
Yep.
Depending on how close you are to me, running may not be an option. But you may be able to crawl out of sight along that entire bank of cubicles to the back and get around. So run doesn't necessarily mean run.
Right,
Just
gotcha.
get away from the threat. But a question was asked this morning, if I can see the shooter, how far will the bullet go? The quick answer is, if you can see the shooter, the bullet's going to hit you.
Yeah.
Without question. So if you can see the shooter can see you. If you can see the shooter, the bullet can reach you. Those are two very important things to remember. So stay out of line of sight, and if you can evacuate that way, do it. Otherwise, the best of your ability to barricade yourself in your cubicle space and try not to be found. And if you are, your option is to fight. And sometimes you're going to run into scenarios where running and barricading are out the door immediately, and it's immediately to fight mode. And that would be the administration that's at the front door. The good news is it's kind of mirrored, you really can't see in that well, and you have that security that's in place where people can't just walk in your lobby. So that would give those people time to escape back to a safe location. But if a car drove to the front and you're at the desk and you're met with an armed confrontation, you fight right now, address it. Does that help? I want you to work through that, because you got to be able to run through the run, hide, fight. Run if you can. If you can't, barricade. If you can't, fight. And sometimes you miss a step or two because it's just not available to you.
Isn't it important not to be the easy target?
Is it important not to be the easy target?
Isn't it important not to be the easy
Absolutely.
target? So even hiding behind a desk is better than being out in the open, because the person who's not hiding behind a desk is going to be where they're going to travel to.
So it's better.
And again, it goes back to the easy target is what draws the attention of most of these shooters, because if I walk in a room and I can't see a single person in the cubicle farm, well, now I got to go search. But if I see a head pop up and start running down a linear path, it's fish in a barrel. So yes, absolutely. Sir.
This morning you discussed
first responders might be in different
Oh.
forms.
Absolutely, thank you. So when an event like this takes place, average response time is 4.5 minutes, and when we show up, it's an all skate. So people are coming from everywhere. Some people may show up looking like me, like it's dressed down Friday. Some people are going to come in your stereotypical police uniform that you all know and recognize internationally. Some people are going to come looking like the military and the SWAT BDUs. Some people are going to come in plain clothes, my SIU detectives that dress in shirt and tie, or my vice and narcotics guys that come in scraggly surf clothes. The people that are in plain clothes should not be by themselves. They will be with a uniform officer, so you and we know that they're cops. Otherwise, they could look like they're in SWAT, or like me, badge, gun, more official looking. And because they're coming from home, they're coming from wherever they are when an event like this takes place, everybody's coming to you. And like I said, our primary mission on initial contact is to find and neutralize the threat. It's important that you know that. Everybody else coming is here to help for sure. I cover that? Somebody over your head wanted to know you.
Are they typically looking for a target, or do they just want to break in and shoot? Like statistically, are there more people that come in and want to go after
The
guy
ones,
who fired them?
the ones you hear about? No, not necessarily.
No, they're going to target. Statistically,
The ones you hear about, no. The ones you hear about, they're coming in to do as much damage as possible as quickly as they can. But there are absolutely disgruntled employee situations where they're coming back for specific people. The Palm Bay Hospital was one in
What
particular.
do you do in that case?
Same thing.
They know all the plans though.
So then all whose plans?
They know all the exits, where to hide.
Well, if you have one person and 6 exits, you still have options. You always have options. Even if there was 6 people at every exit, you still have options. Don't ever give up. Sir?
We've neutralized, before the police get here, we do it quickly, we neutralize the individual. How do we tell you?
911?
Oh, yes, but
You're on site.
You're on, basically, you're coming and say we neutralize them here. You're already coming in the front door. How, do we just go up to you and say we neutralize? Of course, open hands and everything.
I would stay, don't rush whoever's coming in. I would stay in place. If you got, my point with 911 is if you got the ability, because we're going to be, if we make contact with anybody and you're able to talk, again, you don't have to talk, just leave an open line. We're going to maintain communications with you. We're not going to want to terminate that communication. I don't care how many of you are on the phone with our dispatchers until we get there and we make it safe. So you can relay that, which they will relay to us over the radio, which is the quickest way for us to get it. If they're on site, in line of sight, on scene, maintain control of that individual, those individuals, and say, here's the guy, here's what we got going on, but you may only know what your area involved. You may not know if there's a second threat, so that'll handle that portion of it, but it doesn't stop the event for us, because we're still going to do the room-to-room sweeps until we can get everybody verified where they are and their status. That's a good question. Anything else? I know it's a somber topic. I know it's not a fun topic, but I think it's important that we have this conversation. The Department of Homeland Security thinks it's important we have this conversation, and clearly your management does as well. And we're happy to do it. And we will tell anyone that will sit still long enough this plan of action, because it really is going to save lives. And it's not all our secrets either. No more questions? Open forum, Q&A? Yes?
How are we supposed to know there is a situation? Like, here we'll be able to hear it, but like if I'm at school or something, how am I supposed to know if I'm on the other side of campus? We have an open campus.
Because they call it code red, do they have?
But they don't have like speakers outside. Like if all of the students are outside and they're all talking, you can't hear what they're saying.
Do your, I'm assuming if you're outside with the coach probably?
No, like we have power hour where we can eat outside, we can go to classrooms, we can do whatever we want, and it's for an hour in the middle of the day. Or like switching classes or something. How are we supposed to know that?
Well, I think it's ridiculous you guys get to go wherever you want. We were very structured. I'm kidding. I think it's awesome. But I'd have to see the layout of your school and work out what some options would be for that. Because most of the schools have a certain bell that goes with code red, and then the PA system, they come over and say, what you're saying is you could be at the other corner of the football field and there's none of that over there.
Yeah.
Another thing they have, some of the schools have, are phone trees and an automated phone response, like UCF and some other agencies have that, where they send out blast text messages to let you know when something's happening on campus and what it is and where it is if they know. So if you're out on the football field, you don't come back to the gym where the threat is to barricade. You would run to like Eddie's Diner or somewhere around there, same-day surgery center. So that would be an excellent question, and if you don't mind, go back and ask your faculty and let me know. And we can, if there's not something in place, we can start a conversation with them in the sheriff's office because they do security for the school.
We only really practice it in the classroom. Like they'll be like, okay, if you're in this classroom when it happens, this is what you do. But we've never practiced it like if we're at a gym, if we're at...
I think that's another valid question you should bring up to the school. My suggestion to you would be, the only missing link you have there is, because the code red is the meat and potatoes, that whole drill is, even if you just do it with your friends, you're out on PE and you find out there's a code red from text or an alarm or the PA, what is the closest structure to you that you could barricade? And that's where you should go. Unless the threat is between you and that structure, then you pick something else. Does that make sense? Yes?
What if somebody gets injured? Does that still apply?
Well, it depends. So are you in an evacuation mode, or are you in a barricade mode, or are you in a fight mode?
All three.
Okay, if you're in a run mode, you're going to help them as best they can. Did we talk about this? I'm running it together with it. You're going to determine, oh yeah, because I made a comment about my wife maybe not helping me depending if you're going to do the best you can to help that person along, but you still need to evacuate. So if you're in that run mode, that is the priority. And it may mean leaving somebody behind because, again, decision you have to make, I'm not making it for you, but it is possible that if the threat is coming upon you and you're able to evacuate and you say to help that person, you're both going to be attacked. So that's a decision you have to make. Who that person is, how ambulatory they are, what are your other options, can you barricade as opposed to running, and then fight as an option as well. So in the barricade situation, you might be able to render aid a little bit more readily than if you're in a run or a fight mode. So that may be an option for you. If you're all barricaded in the kitchen area like they were, and someone has duct tape burns on their mouth that you have to render aid to. And then in the fight mode, the priority is the fighting. And when and only when the threat is neutralized, you can render aid to the people that are around you. That's an excellent question. It's just, again, so many variables I can't answer it for you. There's no magic answer to that, but certainly there are opportunities for you to render aid. And there are opportunities that is not the priority. Question? Comment? Concern? Anything else?
I think it's part of the policy here that you cannot carry concealed weapons, right?
You cannot carry a gun in the building.
Correct.
You can have it in your car.
In the compartment lock. That's what Sal told me, because I asked him when I got it.
Are you guys on airport property?
No.
Because like Grumman, even if Grumman had a policy, that you could, which they do not, FAA and TSA said you can't because they're on airport property. So they can't even have it in a car over there.
We are evaluating lots of stuff related to this. I don't know if that will stay or not, but right now you cannot have a weapon.
And we have no dog in that fight.
Yeah, sure.
So.
You sit in the back row of a movie theater?
Do I? Absolutely.
Is it, statistically speaking, better when the employees can carry concealed weapons?
I don't have the statistics on that to tell you. But again, I go back to, if you're in a situation that you are legally able to carry a gun, it is not for vigilantism and tracking down the threat. It is for self-protection in a situation that you need a weapon of opportunity. Even if you're in the mall, I don't care where it is. That's to protect you, not go engage a threat. That's not why you have it, A, and I just don't want you in a position when we show up. Anything else? On time? Am I on time?
Just about.
Yeah.
Well, if you think of something, or you still want to ask it in front of the group, if you forward it through, I can get it via email. I'll be happy to answer it for you after the fact. And we have talked about a couple other options for maybe some follow-up training as well. And you'll have videos so you can watch this as many times as you want. But I appreciate you guys listening. I know it's not a fun topic, but I think it's really important.